Every month, gameranx puts together a brand new list of new mobile games for you to play that we think are probably the most worthwhile to try. The best new iOS and Android games in August 2020. Starting off at number 10 is TauCeti Technology Benchmark, which is not a full game. It is a demo, actually, for a first-person shooter coming by way of the developers of Dead Effect, which is a fantastic free game you should try. It's a spiritual successor. You're a cryostasis-held soldier on the ESS Meridian from the Dead Effect 2 game, and crash land on a jungle planet. And the point isn't necessarily that the game is done. Obviously, this is a demo, but this is perhaps one of the most visually impressive games I've seen on mobile. The touchscreen controls are also good, like the actual action is enjoyable, but you can also use a controller with it. And let's just be clear, it's a really smooth FPS demo. At number 9 is Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. Now, keep in mind, this is kind of a free version plus in-app purchase to unlock the whole thing. However, there is actually quite a bit of content in the free version. There's literally 13 dungeons in the free version, which is pretty darn good. And if you remember Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, it's a game that frankly I think needed to be remastered. It was originally released on GameCube in 2003, and I don't think ever really got the proper amount of attention it deserved. It was successful, but like, it's definitely not one of the biggest Final Fantasy games out there. It's an action RPG, and it does a lot of really cool stuff with Final Fantasy conventions, and it's also like one of the cutest Final Fantasies, to be completely frank. They've got it out on basically every platform, so it's really nice to see it on mobile and see it looking as good as it does. It's a remastered version of the game, and really for any Final Fantasy game, it's kind of a mandatory play if you haven't, but it's nice to be able to go back to if you have as well. And number 8 is Soul of Eden, a PvP card game that really, it is a Clash Royale type game. We've seen a lot of these. However, it does a few interesting things. There's over 100 cards in the game. You can build a deck of 30. Games are generally 4 minutes, and it has a few systems intended to keep it fresh. Generally, it does a good job. I think where it particularly excels is its visuals. It really does feel like a unique game, and it's got a visual style that keeps your eyes on the screen. Sometimes these types of games are, of course, very derivative, very generic looking. This is not. You're not going to have a lot of difficulty figuring out what you're doing, though, on account at its core, it is exactly that type of game. It's a good example of that type of game. It's got good art. I like it. Definitely check out Soul of Eden. At number 7 is Sid Meier's Civilization 6. An odd sentence, to say the least. So, if you are aware of what Civilization is, it is a city builder. I mean, it obviously goes well beyond that, but the basic mechanics are that. It is, however, also a 4X strategy game in which you're doing significantly more than simply building a city. But if you don't like the city build, you ain't gonna like Civilization. But again, there is so much more to it. You are building a civilization, you're conquering, you're fighting, you're defending, and you're also like kind of God in a way. There's a lot of stuff you could do that you're definitely not going to be able to do even if you run an entire country. Civilization is like the big one as far as city/world sim games are. And to have Civ 6 on mobile, it's great. It's a very good version of the game. I've enjoyed it. I mean, there's been some disagreement. However, I personally think that it was a step in the right direction because it's not really a major step in any direction. It's just a good game. And now it's on mobile, so play it. It's free. At number 6 is Otherworld Legends, which is kind of a hack and slash, kind of a beat 'em up, kind of a dungeon crawler. It really seamlessly blends these ideas into something that really feels fun, unique, and kind of obvious in some ways. I mean, I don't think that this is an entirely unprecedented game or anything. However, it just has this feeling of freshness to it in that it just nails the controls so well. And you don't often say that with, you know, mobile beat 'em ups. But it never really feels like the assisted targeting gets in the way or isn't kind of an extension of your will, at least. And let's just talk about the graphics for just a moment. This is really just a pretty game. I love the style they've established for it. With 3D backgrounds, it still looks very retro, and pixel art animation that's very fluid, really impressive, and the smooth controls just blend with it so well. At number 5 is Monster Dash. This is an endless runner combined with kind of a bullet hell, kind of a not bullet hell type shooter. I mean, there are melee weapons, there are less bullet hell type weapons. But this is a game that does a really good job integrating weapons into an endless runner. Like, you would think, oh, obvious concept, but until you've actually played a few games that have weapons in an endless running situation, and I have at this point, it would just seem like a simplistic idea. It's actually just a well-balanced, really well-timed game, I guess is the best way to put it. The timing that's required. You get into a rhythm and it starts to feel very natural, and that's a very satisfying feeling. It does look a bit generic. It's not really my favorite look for a type of game, but the gameplay is actually just very good, solid, exciting, but the controls are predictable in a way you would want them to be. Monster Dash is a solid game. I would definitely recommend giving it a shot. At number 4 is Baseball Superstars 2020, which describes itself as a baseball RPG. Now, what this really is a baseball management simulator with a lot of personality. It's a very Japanese anime, let's say. There's also some totally insane stuff in it. It is a management sim, but it does not bother being a simulation of real baseball. There's people with swords in this game. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's wild. But at the same time, it's also actually like a good simulation game. It's my opinion that all of the kind of craziness adds a level of humor to it. Not necessarily laugh out loud all the time humor, but it's certainly whimsical, enjoyable. It's not confusing or anything. It's actually pretty intuitive in how it brings decisions to you, has you change aspects of your team, etc., etc. And like I mentioned at the beginning, it has a lot of personality. It's a game that won't get boring, at least fast. At number 3 is Robotics, which is actually a pretty clever game. Basically, you teach a robot to do an action. You use swiping, grabbing, blah, blah, blah to create a motion that your robot will continually do that is applicable to the situation your robot is put into. It has perhaps the most intuitive controls possible, and it can result in not only some pretty funny stuff, but also some fairly cool stuff. There is a pretty wide variety of types of situations you need to train your robot to get through, from fighting other robots to getting over various terrain. And yeah, I actually think this is a really good game. My only criticism is that it can start to feel a bit repetitive, but that said, the way that this game goes about doing what it's doing, I just think is really cool. It comes to us from the Crash Arena Turbo Stars and Cut the Rope creators, and I think it shows because it's a great physics-based battle/puzzler. At number 2 is Madden NFL 21 Mobile Football. Madden NFL on mobile, as with previous installments, is a football manager. You play a GM, you put together a franchise team, you play games, you do upgrades, you make trades. You basically try to, create the best possible team. You also have the ability to create your own characters and basically guide them through a career mode. If you played Madden NFL last year, it's not shockingly different. Pretty much all the mechanics are carried over. Although, if you played a previous game and want to carry over your Madden NFL stuff to this one, it may not be the case that it works. So basically regard this as a fresh start. I don't want to say that this is like a shocker of a football management sim, because if you played previous entries or the Sega competition to this game, it's not a revelation or anything. However, it's a very good football simulator game, and you may just be in the market for specifically that. And finally, at number 1 is Eveeckos. Now, this is a sandbox MMO based, of course, on EVE Online, which is a very large-scale space economy / life sim, kind of. There's so much to EVE Online. You can't possibly describe everything. There's PvP fleet warfare, there's, like I said, economic simulation, there's piracy, there's government, there's so much to the damn thing. And you're basically whatever. You do whatever. You take part in whatever. It's all there for you to do when you do it. EVE Online is notable for its success as this type of game, a kind of game that is every type of thing in a lot of different respects. This is not a dumbed down version of the game. It's not what I would call an exact port or anything, but they didn't really have to strip much away. And also, visually speaking, it looks very good. That's all for today. Did you try out any of these games? Are you gonna? Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to click the notification bell. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon Hero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.